This, as a reminder, this panel and actually this entire external development track is powered by AMC Studio and Keywords. Thank you for your support. Eugen, please take it away.
Thank you. Does this work? Sorry, I have a couple of notes here, so I'm probably gonna keep looking into this tablet. Hey everyone, it's great to have you here. Thank you for accepting the invite. I think before we dive into innovation, I'd like to give you all a couple of minutes to say a couple of things about who you are and why you're on the panel. So let's take it away from Jaime.
Okay, well, so I've been in the games industry since 1997. That was not the beginning of my career. Before that, I was in software development, very boring stuff, financial shit and stuff like that. My first game was Final Fantasy VII, so I was very, very lucky. I was working on porting the game to be able to ship it in Europe. It took us a year. It was an absolute nightmare. And then I worked in Age of Empires. I remember a lot of things that Kate was talking about this morning. Then I joined Electronic Arts in the year 2000. I spent 15 very long years in Electronic Arts. There were amazing things there. Among them, the opportunity to come to Romania for the first time in 2006. Meet this incredible industry. I've been coming since then. Every year, at least 3 or 4 times per year. I was Vice President International Development. Then I joined Keywords Studios. As CCO, I was a good friend of Andrew Day, who was the CEO of Keywords at the time. And he asked me to do this commercial job that I had never done in my life. I was a programmer first and then an operations guy. And suddenly Andrew thought, oh, no, you're great with clients. And I said, okay, let's see how that works. We spent most of my time in M&A. We bought 50 companies in 5 years. And, rest is history. 2021, Andrew left the company. And I thought I don't want to be in the company without Andrew. He was the reason I was there. And then Mihai Pohontu called me. Mihai is my best friend in the industry. I met Mihai in 2006 when we acquired Yadnat, and we worked together in Electronic Arts for many, many years. I was also an early investor in Amber, and they asked me to become their CEO. So I said, okay, I'm 57, I can give this 3 years until I'm 60. And that's what I did. And they've been the best 3 years of my life, in spite of the terrible crisis, obviously, that we're all going through. But, if I want to give a piece of advice to all of you, is work with your friends. And if you start to make a game, the first thing that you should do is hire your best friend, right, to do it with. Then I stepped down as CEO about 8 months ago, a year ago now, and I joined the board, and I'm still very active, helping the executive team with different things, but mostly things like M&A, investment relationships, and things like that, which is basically what I do these days. That's me.
Okay, my name is Mihai. I am actually not coming from the gaming industry. So thank you for receiving me here. I had an interesting afternoon. I work in a consulting company. It's Central European consulting company in innovation. And I got in contact with Eugen, and he invited me to this panel. So I hope I will come with something interesting.
Oh, definitely. My name is Philip Knowles. I was just here a few minutes ago, seems like. Work for Amazon Games, co-dev, outsourcing, external development. I come from the art side. I started, I'm past 35 years, so at the start it was D-Paint Deluxe, pushing pixels around, 8-bit, 16-bit, all of that, and then interesting to see what we could create as we've gone through those really kind of short period of years and how the industry's changed and everything. But I approach everything from the sort of helping teams get their stuff built, the things that they want to build. And like most outsourced managers, a lot of us come from the art side, but I work across all sorts of different disciplines. There's a lot of parallels across all those areas, whether it's engineering, audio, LOC, post-launch stuff, whatever it is. So I can kind of bring those to bear, those kind of universal things. And yeah, I've been just doing it for a lot of years and made a lot of great relationships in the game industry. And it's really cool to have been here at Bucharest and see this region and see what's going on here, including our studio here.
Thank you, and thank you for joining me on this panel. I'm Eugen. I'm currently acting as a production director at the AMC studio here in Bucharest. I've been in the industry for over 15 years. I'm doing this panel because I did a master thesis on innovation, and I realized we're not talking a lot about innovation in games. So I'll start with a bit of a summary so that everyone has like a good idea of what I would consider innovation, and based off of that, we'll take it off. So some examples, and these aren't all the examples, just some I chose because they're dear to my heart. Back in 2007, the team behind Portal came up with an incredible Portal mechanic that now has become very common across games, and it redefined the genre. So that's an example of innovation. Back in 2016, we witnessed the launch of No Man's Sky. A lot of people thought that project will never see the light of day. It's too ambitious, some said, but in the end, they managed to create a nearly infinite universe, all with procedural generation. And more recently, if we want to look at it, there's games that innovated through their business models. Things like Roblox and Fortnite, both have seen success back in 2016 and afterwards, and that hasn't stopped. So the first question for this conversation is, does innovation still exist in games?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Of course it does. I mean, games are pure innovation. That's basically what we are and what we have been for the last 40 years. And you have to remember that in our industry we're still in the equivalent of black and white in the cinema industry back in the 40s. So there is still plenty more innovation to be had. I think there are 4 types of innovation, and you mentioned one, which is basically gameplay. I'm a hardcore gamer, so I'm, very close to my heart. That one, and innovation on that front is absolutely necessary for the industry to continue to go forward. But there are also technical innovations. You will talk about AI. I'm absolutely certain of that. That will allow us to do things that we were not able to do before, and will allow individual creators, to do things that they couldn't even dream of doing before. There's also business model innovation. One very big thing in the games industry was the different business models, and we may like or not like them, but I remember when multiplayer came, it used to be that as players were guys that were playing on our own in the darkness, in the basement, and suddenly we became incredibly social, right? So business model, free to play, packaged goods disappearing, online digital delivery, live ops, all these things are business model innovations. And finally, the last type of innovation is the way to fund your games, right? The way that, the different agents, investors, publishers, work with teams to be able to fund games at the individual level, or companies at the global level, is also changing, has changed quite a lot, and is still changing today.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Well, from my point of view, not really. I fully agree. I think innovation has many sides, and yeah, it can be technical, technological, business model. Yeah, but it's definitely possible everywhere, not just in games. But I cannot see. I was thinking about an area which cannot innovate, and I couldn't find actually.
Yeah, I mean, it does, and it always will. I mean, that's just the nature of games and game developers. We're sort of an anarchistic bunch, I'd say, on the whole, and we're always sort of driving to make something different. The challenge is it gets, it gets hijacked by the P&L quite often, right? So you want to innovate, teams want to innovate, you're working on things maybe, and it just can get shut down. So I think you have to sort of fight for that when you're a development team, to continue to innovate and not just sort of get pulled into a, we're taking these features and these elements, and this is the game we're making, and just make that and get it out there. But things are shifting quite a bit. How we go to market, what kind of money we spend on, the game, hyping the game post launch, all that kind of stuff is certainly changing. And what I see at Amazon is that we're constantly looking at okay, in the reality of the market, how do we innovate so that we can do that better or more cost efficiently, but still be innovative?
Thank you. Well, continuing on this front, recently it feels as if innovation in games mostly means Web3, metaverse, and AI.
I hope not.
Do you feel these are the right avenues for innovation in the future in games? Or are they just things that are going to disappear at some point?
I think time has proven that these are not the paths. I mean, I don't know about AI, but we're talking about metaverse. Don't get me wrong. I know that the metaverse is here and is here to stay. And part of that metaverse will be games. And on that sense, I think it is innovative. The whole crypto technology for me was a very, very complex and heavy technology that was solving problems that were already solved in other ways that are simpler and less heavy, right? And I don't think the crypto thing brought anything new to the games industry, not even technical capabilities. You could hate AI, but there is no question that even today we can make games that are different because of AI. Think about AI as a feature, right? Not as a tool, right? NPCs that feel alive, that feel that they're changing their answers with the flow of the game. So there is no question about that. But there are some technologies that I find have been dead ends in the industry, and I think that the jury is not still out. The jury has already given their sentence.
Well, when I look to innovation, I still believe in the human factor. I think that we should use all these instruments, like you mentioned, metaverse, AI, but I still believe in human factor. This is my experience. We started to use AI several years before, but I don't know why. I still see the need for the human beings there. That's my private experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the interesting things that happens in external development and outsourcing is when something comes along, that group of people, the service providers and the buyers, it's like it hits overdrive because you're asking people to do stuff that hasn't been done. And so you go to your vendors and you start asking them. So right when VR started to become a little more commercial, tons of projects were VR projects. It's also the first thing that goes away. And you can see it going away, and it's like, oh, that's not going to last because there are no more projects going to the vendors. Same thing with blockchain. Right now we're in a stage where everybody's asking their partners to innovate in AI around production methodologies and creating content and stuff like that. So the tools. And I think some of that will definitely be adopted and become part of the pipelines and the workflows. What we're trying to do at Amazon, and I think around AI anyway, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, is around mechanics and gameplay and game systems and things like that, not just production or how to lower costs. Yeah.
Thank you. Since you touched on external development, I think I'm going to jump a bit ahead and say, Clayton Christensen, who's considered the father of disruptive innovation, uses to say that in order for large companies to innovate, they need to have a specific set of teams in a separate area of the company. So they need to be completely separate from the main organization and give them complete freedom and some constraints. Does this feel accurate? Are companies trying that at the time, or is it more of a dream at this point?
It is the process. Big companies, and I'm now going back to my years in EA. Big companies like EA are machines to say no. They are machines to destroy projects. For everything that you green light, you've said no to 500 ideas. This inevitably percolates into the culture of the company in a way where people are thinking more about the reasons why we should not do this than the reasons why we should do this. And you mentioned No Man's Sky, and those guys, they came out and they said, hey, we're gonna procedurally create universes, and they couldn't do it. Like for real, and they knew they couldn't do it. If they had let that stop them, it would never have happened. Right? They got a lot of bashing because, game came out and people thought, what the fuck is this? I'm sorry for my French. But they kept at it and they eventually did that. So you really need to have something that is separate from the corporate culture and that has something special around it. Electronic Arts tried to do and continues to do these days things like putting 4 or 5 creators somewhere different, not in one of the offices, but in the home of one of them or in a garage or whatever, continue to pay their salaries and basically say, go ahead and do what you want to do. Now, that actually eventually fails. Innovation in the big corporations is not very successful. I could talk about this for like 5 hours, and you could talk about this for 10 hours, I assume, but it's usually not, because the big companies are not built for that. That doesn't mean that they cannot find ways like the one that I just described to get around that, but the reality is the innovation will come from the people in this room, from the indies, from the guy that decided that he was gonna build Balatro on his own with technology from 2007, I guess, and suddenly created something incredible, right? Yeah. And you mentioned Portal. How long since we've seen real innovation, from the same teams, that did that. So I do think that each of the players in the ecosystem have their roles, and innovation should be in all the roles. But some groups, some people, indie studios, indie developers are the ones that are going to push and are pushing innovation right now. If you guys haven't played Clair Obscur, please do play Clair Obscur. It's an absolutely mind-blowing game that was done by 35 guys, in France, and that is unapologetically French. It's different. They are doing something that is part of them, and that's why it's different, and that's why it's innovative.
Yeah, well, what happens to me very often is that some C-level executive, often the CEO, calls me and tells me, what shall we do to be more innovative? Because nowadays it is very cool to position yourself as being innovative, so to have innovation somewhere in your statements of strategy, vision, something. And it's a difficult answer, actually, because many companies, as you said, they are killers of innovation. They are very, how to say, petrified companies. And well, what I reflected a lot at this. What shall a company do in order to become more innovative? And my answer is that you need a critical mass of enthusiastic people inside, people who love innovation. How do you make this critical mass? That's a different question. But I think when you manage to have a critical mass of people in love with innovation, then you manage to infect all the company with this love of innovation, and innovation happens somehow. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, being basically a group within Amazon that doesn't even show up on the ledger, frankly, means we sort of fly under the radar, and we've got a lot of autonomy on what we're trying to do. So, but the mandate comes down, and that really the only place where we can experiment and spend money on prototyping and innovating is in AI. And so, I see things sometimes where it's that are proposed, and Amazon is very good about ground up proposals of things, and then getting traction, and then getting funding and everything, and then it's you're off and running. But you can see a little bit of a forced yeah, it's going to have AI component to it, but we don't know exactly what that is. But if we don't put that in here in our proposal, it's not going to go anywhere. So that can be tough because it may not have anything to do with what you're trying to build. Yeah, and I still think that you just have to fight for what you're trying to, what you see as your own personal or your team's personal vision of innovation, and try and find that champion for that.
Fair enough. Thank you. And since we started talking about AI, why don't we dive a bit deeper? Because the narrative right now is around agentic AI. So one of the questions I would pose is, how would you see AAA games, or maybe even indie games, evolve 10 years from now?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't know. I do think AI is one of those disruptive opportunities that will generate true innovation to the point where most of us, even in the industry, cannot imagine, what the future will look like. I mean, there are some things that are pretty clear. AI will be a tool that takes care of boring, repetitive work. I think Tudor in the previous panel was talking about that. And that's kind of low-hanging fruit. I don't call that innovation. That's yet another automation tool. And in video games, we've been trying to automate things for 40 years, as far back as I remember. Game engines are basically automation tools, right? So I don't think that's where the innovation will happen. I think it will happen on gameplay. I think the ability to have an intelligent game in front of you is going to disrupt the industry. If you think about the way that games work today, it assumes that the game is stupid. In many cases, I play Civilization 7, I'm a very hardcore gamer, and we keep complaining that the AI is stupid. Obviously, the AI is not stupid. The AI has the capability to play 1,000 times better than I play, and I'm one of the best players. And you don't want that. And there was actually somebody from Firaxis, which is the development studio that develops Civ, that said something that I really could relate to. They asked him, hey, the game is not balanced, what the hell are you guys going to do that? And he said, we are going to balance it a little bit, but a balanced game is a boring game. And it is absolutely true. So how can we use AI as a feature and any other technological or creative innovation to create games that are not more intelligent but more crazy than they are today? So I do think that democratizing the capability to build a game by giving tools, AI tools, that allow single individuals or even small teams of 5 to create games is going to create a wave of innovation that will be unprecedented. So I am actually very, very positive about that, in spite of the fact that AI scares the shit out of me in other levels.
Well, actually, I don't know how the future will be, honestly, but the saying that the best way to predict future is to create it. So let's work on it. So I don't know. I have the feeling that probably it will be a mixture between AI and human, some augmented human thing, but that's just a hunch. So I don't know. Let's work for it.
I really like
That sounds cool.
Let's work on it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's work on it.
Yeah, I was watching channels or whatever the other night, and something I know nothing about, which is makeup. The CEO for L'Oreal came on, and I was kind of watching. They were going through their labs, and he was talking about how everything they're doing is around personalization and customization for the individual, so that the individual can choose products that are just right for them and completely different than everybody else. And I kind of feel like that's like the vision of AI in gameplay and in gaming, is that you can, the player has the ability to craft their own gameplay in the game, which maybe is good, maybe it's not so good. To me, I feel like people always want really highly crafted experience as well, and they want really engaging social moments with other players. And so, like, how do you find that mix of being able to in-game have they're really controlling everything and their game is playing, or within the constraints of the game or within the subject matter of the game, something really unique to them, but still sharing those universal moments and all that goodness that comes from being part of a gaming community around a product. So I think that's where it gets kind of exciting, that maybe we can find some things there that are a little bit different than we've had in the past.
Can I change my answer and go for Phil's
You like
answer?
that one?
I like your answer, yes.
That's what you get for flipping channels at 2 a.m. because you can't sleep because you got to give a presentation and you're
Gives
watching.
good ideas, though. Okay. So I think the feeling I'm getting is that right now we're in an era of sort of a refined, maybe layered innovation where people take old things and they make them better, slightly better, just incremental improvements, that sort of thing. Do you believe this is what the near future holds, or are we going to see a return to like raw, groundbreaking innovation in gameplay or business models?
Yeah, incremental innovation. The industry, 90% of the industry is exactly as you describe. And, let me go to my beloved EA, FIFA 20, FIFA 21, FIFA 22, FIFA 23, and then FC 24 and 25 and 26. So I have shipped 15 FIFAs. So I know about incremental innovation. I can tell you about that. But I don't think we are not in that era. I truly believe that completely different things are going to happen. I mean, not just because of AI. This scarcity creates innovation in many ways. And this crisis that we're going through is giving us things like Balatro, for instance. You look at Balatro, for those of you that don't know, it's like a poker game. It's not a poker game. It actually uses the poker rules, but it's not that, right? It's a roguelike, actually. And I don't think that game would have shipped 3 years ago. It really wouldn't. But now that guy, one single guy, was able to build it, right? So I think we're gonna see a lot of innovation in the coming years as people try to do things differently. Now that game making is more democratized, you're gonna find a lot of things that look like each other, right? And I think the guys that are going to be the success of this, although every innovator is somebody that has success already, but the commercially successful one are those that are going to be different and that are going to reflect the passions and your culture and the things that make you different. And I truly believe this. I'm hoping that this is true, by the way. I cannot see the future, as Mihai was saying, but I'm working on trying to get the future to look like that and not incremental innovation.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's normal that most of the innovation is incremental because, that's the way how we operate. But I'm sure there will be also disruptive innovation, and just because this is a human spirit. There is some magic which appears at a certain moment, and some crazy stuff appears. So I'm sure it will appear. So I'm sure there will be not just incremental or adjacent innovation. It will be for sure also this disruptive somehow, in a way we cannot imagine now, but it will be.
Yeah, I'd say I hope it's disruptive. I mean, if I have to see another thing that seems like they just put a bunch of features in a hopper and went like that, and we've been kind of in that state for a while. And and sometimes those games are still successful, and they find some magic, kind of pulling pieces from other things, and obviously everything's influenced by everything else. But I feel like it would be, it'd be nice to be able to have an avenue or a way to take really creative, small indie games and mechanics and things that are built, and they don't necessarily on their own can't be turned into some big AAA thing, but maybe there's a little bit of that and a little bit of something brought from an avenue for doing that kind of thing, from taking smaller, kind of interesting, engaging things and turning them into bigger things a little more easily and a little more creatively, and like that was an okay avenue for people to go. Like if you put something out there, a couple of people, you're not expected to now make it super big on your own, and it's like, how do I get there with the help of companies like ours?
Thank you. Jaime.
Yes.
What do you think the next wave of innovation is going to target? Is it going to be business model, production workflows? Is it ways of working? Is it gameplay? Or what do you hope it's going to target?
Business model, I don't think so. At least I cannot see it right now. I haven't seen a new emerging business model. There are some things like premium seems to be coming back, which is great for me because I love premium games. But then I'm 60 years old, of course. So I'm gonna leave that aside. There is no question that there's going to be a production revolution. Literally, AI will ensure. AI plus the $30 billion that people are putting on AI will make sure that there is a productivity revolution, and we need it, guys, because games are way too expensive, and yes, people are arguing for having more expensive games when you buy them, and I totally agree with that. I have no problem paying $130 for GTA 6 when it comes, because it really deserves it. But the reality is that there needs to be a way to make games cheaper than the way that we are doing it today, right? But that's not a very interesting revolution. We've lived revolutions in production once every 5 years for as far back as I can remember. Even Unreal 4 to Unreal 5 was a little bit of a revolution. I don't know if you guys have worked on those engines, and I see some nodding heads here, but that was a revolution, right? But not very interested in that. What I'm hoping for, and I say, as Mihai says, what we are working on is try to figure out, what kind of gameplay revolutions are there. Look, in many ways, we still interact with games the same way that I was interacting with Pong in 1978 when I was 13. I for real, the controllers, the flat screen in front of me, and yes, now it has colors, and the controller has gizmos that allows me to do things that I couldn't do before. But fundamentally, we're still interacting with games in that way, and I think just there, and it's a huge revolution if we manage to change the way that we interact with games. We will have completely different games that we cannot even imagine right now. So I think gameplay is where we will see the biggest changes in the next 10 years. I hope so.
Okay. Phil, I think you touched a bit on the subject, but I want to ask, how, in your opinion, obviously, is Amazon tackling innovation, Amazon games specifically?
You mean around AI?
Around anything you want to talk about.
Well, they're doing drones for delivery. They can get a lot of stuff the next day or same day. But I don't know anything about that other than the same thing that we all know. Around AI, I'd say, there's a ton, obviously. The numbers are massive that they're spending on. And a lot of it's around AWS and those services, around, all the other verticals of the business and everything. What I've seen in the games group and the entertainment group as a whole is that it's we're not trying to build a bunch of tools to make things faster, less expensive necessarily. We're trying to look at things that are sort of more groundbreaking in systems and like delivery methods, I guess I'd call them, like around. This is a big area of what we're talking about in our group, is around how do we get games to market, publicize them, get them hyped, you know, in a less expensive and more sort of like meet the player where they are kind of method, and can AI help us with that? You know, because it's hard to filter through all this games you might want to play or what you're interested in, and so I think that's the most important area for us, is like how can we either build something that innovates in what kind of games we're making or how we get them out there to people, as opposed to, you know, like production tools or that kind of thing. So I like that because I think it, you know, it gives us, it just, like you said, it gives us more tools to play with in the toolbox, but more around like what we're creating, not so much in like, oh, I can generate a whole bunch of ideas really quickly, and maybe that helps my personal thing, but I need tools to actually be able to do something cool and innovative, right?
All right, thanks. That's a great answer. Okay, Mihai. Have you seen gaming companies coming towards you to ask for support in innovation? If yes, how so? And if not, why do you think that is?
No, not in Romania. I'm also not in the group. I don't know exactly why. Because we work out with digital products. I mean, all the innovation nowadays are somehow related to digital products, in banking, in finance, in financial sector, in automotive, in pharma, everywhere. But gaming, pure gaming, no. I don't know why. Maybe we didn't communicate it enough towards this industry.
I've used companies like IDG. More about culture change to create a culture that is more friendly to innovation than actual innovation project, because you need to have subject matter expertise, and I think I find it a pity that not more companies come to you guys, because I've worked with innovation professionals and the result has usually been spectacular, and the personal growth of the people involved has been very, very significant.
Yeah. I think indeed company culture is the biggest blocker for this. In the previous panel you discussed a lot about culture, and again, if we look at what stops innovation, it's practically the culture, not money, not the technology, it's the culture, and this starts from the leaders. Yeah, honestly, yeah, from there.
I love that you touched on this. Before we came here, I had a conversation with someone that might be here, like an aspiring game designer, and she was telling me how she once pitched a project internally at the company she was working for, interning at, and one of the things she heard from most of her seniors was that, oh, you can't do this. Like, this is like two different games. You can't really merge them. But she kept on, and the result was actually something that's really fascinating. It's a different style of gameplay. So with this in mind, what do you think are the blockers to innovation in games?
Can you imagine, Will Wright back in 1998 telling people, oh, I'm going to do this simulation of real life and I'm going to call it The Sims. And, the way that people probably reacted, not probably, I know how they reacted because I was there. And of course, you can merge two games and create something completely different. In fact, most of us that construct innovation in a procedural way, because we have no talent like me. I don't have a lot of creative talent. But I usually am good at finding two or three different things and thinking, what if we put them together, right? Would that be something different? What stops innovation is culture, Mihai, I think was absolutely on point. And the reason her seniors told her that that couldn't be done is because of the culture of that particular company. So you have to, have innovation, and I've tried many times because I admire innovators and I admire people with talent, and I chose to work in video games because I get to work with you guys, full of talent. I'm looking at Nestor over there, and he and I worked 15 years ago. Back at the time, he had a crazy idea, especially for a company like Electronic Arts, and we said yes, and we funded it, and it was very hard, but it succeeded quite dramatically, and really, you also said sometimes it's down to the person that has to say yes or no.
Yes.
And you need to get used to saying yes. And it's very uncomfortable because you don't know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen if you say no, but you don't know what's going to happen if you say yes. And that really doesn't feel great, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you're stuck in the past.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, Amazon has this, the 5-pager thing, if you've ever heard of that. Yeah. So,
I was going to ask.
Yeah. And the idea around that is that anybody can propose something, and, that those are taken very seriously. There's literally classes and all this documentation on what makes a good 5-pager and stuff. And the idea is that it'll get reviewed by a number of people, and it'll be thoroughly done, and it's not just because they're trying to avoid the I don't like that kind of game, or I don't like that kind of thing, or I worked on something like that and it completely failed, or whatever it is that leads to those no's. That doesn't mean everything gets going, but the whole thought behind that is that it's a little bit more of a peer-reviewed kind of thing. But, it's sort of tough to, sometimes things are good ideas and everybody thinks they're a good idea. You just can't push them through at that time or at that company. We were, for a little bit, working on a Games for Good around the environment, environmental practices, and we're going to try and tie it into Amazon retail and the climate pledge, ability to shop with climate-friendly products. And we just could not get it past all the different organizations and groups within Amazon. It was a good idea, but we just couldn't quite get it to the point where it made sense, and we kind of knew how it was going to implement. So, good idea. Seems like it would make sense for Amazon. Didn't quite go anywhere. We're still sort of trying to work on it and massage it, but it's not always as easy. Or
until you leave Amazon and make it work and become multimillionaire.
Yeah, maybe if somebody came to Amazon with that idea and they weren't part of Amazon, maybe it's easier. It's like we have one of the insider information, it's hard for us. You'd think we have all this IP with Prime Gaming or Prime Video and studios and stuff, but it's not easy for us to actually get games started and built up around that IP because of those different groups. And at big companies, sometimes you just get to where you're like, I'm not going to keep pushing this ball up the hill. So it's a reality.
Thank you. Want to add something?
No.
I had an interesting conversation with Philip from Hazelight a couple of nights ago. I don't know if he's here. He might be here. But one of the things we kind of agreed on from our experience is that it seems that the people doing the most gameplay innovation, for lack of a better word, are the creative directors that are slightly dictatorial, in the sense that they know exactly what their vision is, and they have a gift for bringing the team to do exactly that vision and not straying in any other direction. And that's sort of like the secret sauce to innovative games.
I despise those people. I think there is no excuse for that. There really isn't. And there are some people here that have worked with me and know how fucking strongly I feel about this. There is no space for that. I've seen creators, amazing creators, that instead of using the stick, use their charisma and their passion and their joy of life and their joy on what they are doing, and it is contagious, and you want to hang out with them and you want to be with them, and if they are working through the night, you stay and you work through the night with them because you believe in them. Those I admire. But these other guys, and I work with a bunch of them, especially in the games industry 20 years ago, not so much these days. People are, well, the industry is maturing, fortunately. There's no excuse. You know, when somebody tells me, I'm going to be brutally honest, I said, could you be kindly honest? Instead of brutal, it just takes a little bit more effort. And it does take a little bit more effort. But we should take that effort. Okay, ramming your ideas through, no. No. Sorry, I despise those guys.
Hello, let's take a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Wait a second. We'll start here.
Hey guys, sorry, my voice. So, no, I can't. Okay, let me try again.
That was controlled yesterday night, right?
Oh man, this is what you get for singing Lady Gaga. Guys, I was thinking about Unreal earlier, and it's obviously they created a lot of innovation, but it feels that their success is putting them in a position of almost a monopoly of sorts. Do you feel that their success is gonna make them innovate even more, or do you think it's gonna put brakes on innovation?
You're talking about Unreal. God, I admire the Unreal guys, but there is something in what you're saying. There is something when you have a lot to lose. It's more difficult to innovate because you are extremely successful, right? And you think, I've done this. If I can get my lighting automation just one iota better, you know, that's gonna be amazing and whatever, right? And sometimes they forget about other things. I don't know. I don't want to bash Unreal. I come from, work for hire, so we tend to work with multiple game engines. And before that, I worked in Electronic Arts, and Electronic Arts has their proprietary engine, which is called Frostbite, right? And I remember raving about it, and we did a lot of technical work on that in my teams. But the reality is, frankly, these are tools, they are there to be used. And it's the people, the users, the people that use these tools that really do the innovation or not. And yes, you're talking about this monopoly, but Unity doesn't look that different from Unreal. And Frostbite actually doesn't really look that different from Unreal, except that it's a lot more difficult to use. And let not me get started on some of the Japanese developers' proprietary engines, which are an absolute nightmare to use. I think there is probably a little bit of complacency given the situation of power that they have, and I wish that they could do more. I do think Unreal 5 is great. I really do think that, and I think it does serve a purpose, which is basically because half of the problem is developing a game engine, right? The other half is finding people that actually know how to use it. And the advantage of this progressive innovation that we were talking about before is that you have a very big amount of users that actually know more or less intuitively how to use these engines, right? And it makes the engine useful more or less quickly. But there is something in what you're saying.
Mulțumesc for talking a lot today. Yeah, it's fine. I've been asking questions all day, every day. Sorry. I have a question for Jaime. If I'm pronouncing correctly, I apologize.
Jaime, yeah.
Yeah, I did it.
You've done it
Thanks.
right, yeah. It's like Mihai, but the other way around. Jaime. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, given that you've worked at EA for 15 years and you've mentioned FC/FIFA, how it innovates a bit with every iteration, and the fact that you see the biggest innovation it's going to be in gameplay. I'm curious, given all of the above, how do you see the types of games like FC and other annual launched games innovate or improve in gameplay, especially given that it has a short development time of a year? And how would you like to see the gameplay shift for these types of games, especially for FC?
I like to see all of those games burn in hell. That's not true.
Ouch.
That is not true. If I say that, I will be
It's a joke.
depriving literally millions of people that love playing the latest version of FIFA from their fan, and that is completely not on. Okay, so that was my little joke. Developing an innovation in something that is as mature as FC is very, very difficult. And I've seen the team. That team is without a doubt, in the 30 years of working in the industry, the best team that I've worked with, the more professional team, the more efficient team, the more predictable team, the more crazy team. In fact, we have an ex-producer of FIFA here, and here's Nestor again. So you can ask him directly how that innovation is done. But that innovation is done through people like Nestor, producers or people from QA, or anybody in the studio can have an idea and they will be heard, pushing the envelope a little bit farther. A lot of the innovation in FIFA also comes with technology. When you go to a new console generation, or you go to a new generation of Frostbite, which is the game engine that is being used to develop FIFA, that's an innovation. And I don't know if you've been following FIFA. I'm not a big fan of sports games, but FIFA holds a place that is dear to me in my heart. But the career mode, I find, was very innovative at the time, extremely difficult to do. I didn't have the hair white before we actually tried to do that. Very, very difficult to do, because suddenly you're doing this narrative game in the middle of a game that is not narrative at all, right? So that was difficult. And that's basically the way that it's done. And I think what pushes innovation in FC is precisely those millions and millions of people. They all have an opinion. They all know a lot about FIFA. So this is an informed opinion, right? And, the team very, very badly wants to succeed. And most of the years, they actually succeed.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question, or?
Yeah, but I'm laughing because we work on career mode currently.
So then you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. But I was more, I'm at EA for almost a year, actually a year. But given that you had 15 years of experience, I was like, how do you see the gameplay of FC, maybe career mode or FC as a whole, change, innovate for real?
I don't know.
Or how would you like to see it?
Yeah, well,
if we do a little bit of brainstorming.
My time in EA was 2000 to 2015, so we are talking about some time ago, right?
Yes.
And when I joined EA was the underdog, because Pro Evolution Soccer back then was the game that everybody was playing. I was clearly better than FIFA. Clearly, I'm talking being a fan of EA. And I remember seeing that team fight back and, get to the top position during 5 or 6 years of development, having long-term roadmaps that really reach beyond the things that were technically possible at the time that they were invented, right? So I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen. Or sorry, I do know, because my brother actually works in Electronic Arts, and I get some information. But I do know that EA makes sure that FC has the best people, the best talent, the best creators, the best developers, the best of everything, not just in EA, but in the industry. If you put all that talent together, I actually have a lot of faith that, FC is going to continue to be fun in the coming years. And look at you guys.
All right,
Good example of that.
Here's the thing. we're getting close to the end, but I need two people in the room, two specific people in the room for the next little bit, and only one of them is here. So we'll just keep taking questions until they come. We had one here.
Maybe you can go and hunt them down.
Thank you for the panel. So recently we've been seeing a lot of the big innovative games in more of the roguelike genre, right? Like Slay the Spire was really big, really new. And then Vampire Survivors wasn't, a completely new concept, but it was very big and everyone liked it. And then we also had Balatro, right? The genre took a lot of shapes. For each of you, what's a genre you would like to see innovation? Because we can't predict the future, as Mihai said, right? So what's a genre you would love to see innovation?
We will predict like there's no tomorrow. Don't worry about it. I actually like roguelike a lot. And have you played Hades? Oh, you should. Oh, well, yeah, if you have, then yeah, it's amazing. I think that the reason roguelike is so popular these days is because they're relatively cheap to make. For indies, that's a lot of content that you can pump out, without having to build enormous amounts of levels and stuff like that. So, Hades is 46 levels, if I remember right. They're procedurally changing all the time, right? Me, I'm a 4X player. So, turn-based strategy, which is terrible, I know, to admit this. I play everything. I'm very, very hardcore. I'm a very, very hardcore gamer, but it's in 4X where I would like to see one more step. Civilization 7 for me was a little bit of a letdown, full of very good ideas, and the jury's still out because it's not really finished, that game yet, but 4X is my answer. Phil, Mihai?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a marketplace product. It's hard for me to say that. So I'm not sure I really have all my focus is on helping teams build what they're trying to build. So I don't really look too much at the market, what's going on in the actual overall market and what might be successful or what not, because if I bring that to the table when people are asking to build things, I probably, I have to stay sort of pulled back from that. So yeah, I don't know. All I know is we have a couple of cool things coming out that I hope will disrupt some genres.
Indeed.
We have a last question here.
Hey folks, thank you so much for your lovely insights. In the past 10, 20 years, the educational process for youngins has definitely changed exponentially. They've changed their books to tablets and to websites and to online libraries. And through some specific games such as the Assassin's Creed franchise and through their discovery mode, they've made this process of learning even more entertaining and accessible for everyone. Let's say hypothetically, I don't know, an indie dev would come to you with an idea for a game that also has an educational substrate to it. Perhaps that idea would not sell that much, but would enhance a lot the future of young people learning. Would any of your companies be interested in that? And if no, or if yes, what would be your initial take on it?
I am going to answer that because I've had a lot of indie devs come to me with ideas for educational games. And actually, I'm very familiar because I'm passionate about education. I think the two pillars are education and health, right? So even here in Romania, we are we founded a game development school called the Eco School because we believe in the ecosystem. We not just on the work. First, what I would do with somebody that proposed that to me is listen. The first question that I would ask is it fun? Because a lot of the times when educational gamification projects get presented to me, they forget about the fact that the most important thing, it's called a game because it's fun. If it's not fun, it's work or something else, right? But not a game, right? And if the answer is yes, then I would ask, tell me more, because for me, it is aspirational. I think games could potentially be the most powerful education tool in the world, because they are engaging, because they are fun, because people want to play them, and especially at young ages even more, right? So I do think, I would try to support this indie, but the first question, is it fun, should have a good answer.
Yeah, back in the old days, I mean, I remember when I first started, edutainment was as more of as important of a component of electronic or digital entertainment as gaming. I mean, it was, and it just seems to have kind of gone away as a sort of a mainstream, and it's very sort of, like I've been involved in a few products where it's edutainment based on some sort of hardware, like tabletop hardware, and none of those ever have seemed to go anywhere really. So it just seemed to fall out of a potential type of genre that could appeal to a broader audience, whether it was a young audience or whether it was mechanics in an adult game. I'd love to see that come back as part of gaming. I mean, I hate to grind, and I think it's, I don't know, I'd rather kind of have, the more adventure, the more discovery, the better. It's just, yeah, like you said, it's got to be fun, and it's got to be natural to whatever the game subject matter is, I guess.
Where is Carmen Sandiego?
Well, I have the feeling that education will be one of the next fields which will be disrupted, because we are still learning like 150 years ago, and this is unbelievable. So it's a tremendous potential there in education. And yes, we have to try different things. We don't know exactly what will be, but something will appear, because I repeat, it's not possible. It's outrageous that we still have the schools and the faculties in the way we have, honestly. I'm also professor in faculty, and I'm trying different things always with my students, because, yeah, we have to. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for the insightful discussion.
Thanks.